You probably think the zombie fungus controls ants by eating their brains. That's how the games show it. That's how the movies show it. And that's how scientists thought it worked for over 150 years. Then, in 2017, a researcher at Penn State sliced open hundreds of zombie ants to find the brain damage. There wasn't any. The brain was untouched, completely intact. So, if the fungus wasn't controlling the brain, what was driving the ant? By the end of this video, you're going to know the answer, and the answer is going to change the way you think about what mind control even means. Let me set the scene. Somewhere in the rainforests of Thailand, a worker carpenter ant leaves the nest before sunrise. She climbs 30 meters into the canopy to forage. She does this every day. Today is no different. Except today, a single microscopic spore lands on her back. It's smaller than a grain of dust. She doesn't feel it. The spore germinates. It drills through her exoskeleton using a combination of mechanical pressure and enzymes, like a tiny fungal driller, and slips into her bloodstream. She returns to the nest. She still feeds the larvae. She still grooms her sisters. For 3 to 9 days, everything looks normal. And then the fungus wakes up. The species is called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. It was first described in 1859 by the British naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, the same year Darwin published On the Origin of Species. For 1.5 centuries, it was a curiosity, a footnote in tropical biology textbooks. Then a man named David Hughes started crawling through Thai rainforests, picking up dead ants, and he noticed something nobody had noticed before. The ants were all dying in the same place. Hughes mapped them, hundreds of dead ants, and the pattern was almost too clean to believe. 25 centimeters above the forest floor, always. Higher and the air gets too dry. Lower and other fungi compete. 25 centimeters is the exact zone where humidity and temperature are perfect for the fungus to grow. Same orientation, most of the ants were facing north-northwest. Same time of day. Almost every single bite happened within 4 hours of solar noon. And here's where it stops feeling like biology and starts feeling like something else. The ant doesn't choose any of this. The ant has no idea where 25 centimeters is. The ant cannot read a compass. The ant cannot read a clock. But the fungus inside the ant, a creature with no eyes, no nervous system, no brain of its own, somehow steers the ant to a precise GPS coordinate, at a precise time of day, at a precise altitude, and then makes her bite. Hughes called this extended phenotype, the idea that a parasite's genes can produce effects that reach outside its own body, into the body of its host. The fungus is, in a sense, walking the ant, and for years, everyone assumed the fungus must be doing this by hijacking the ant's brain. That's the part that turned out to be wrong. In 2017, a Penn State graduate student named Maridel Fredrickson did something nobody had done before. She took infected and uninfected ants, and she sliced them into pieces 50 nanometers thin, smaller than the wavelength of visible light. Then, she fed every slice into an electron microscope and used a deep learning algorithm to rebuild the entire interior of the ant in 3 dimensions. She wanted to find the part of the brain the fungus was eating. She didn't find it, because there was no damage to the brain. The brain was sitting in the head, structurally perfect, neurons intact. The fungus was nowhere near it. But everywhere else? The fungus was everywhere else. It had wrapped itself around individual muscle fibers throughout the ant's body. It had grown into the spaces between the muscle cells. The fungal cells were even networking with each other, connecting across the muscle tissue, forming a kind of distributed grid inside the host. By the time the ant was ready to do its death grip bite, almost half of every infected ant by cell count was no longer ant. It was fungus wearing an ant. David Hughes put it this way: almost like a puppeteer pulls the strings to make a marionette move, the fungus controls the ant's muscles to manipulate the host's legs and mandibles. The puppeteer is not in the head. The puppeteer is in the muscles, pulling each fiber from the outside. And here's the part that genuinely gives scientists a chill. Even now, if the brain is intact, the ant might still be in there, watching, aware, unable to stop her own legs from climbing. We don't know for sure. We can't ask her. The death grip itself is a final piece of engineering that took us until 2019. To understand, when the moment comes, usually within 4 hours of noon, the fungus releases compounds into the jaw muscles that cause them to contract. Not normally, hypercontract. One single violent contraction so forceful that the muscle filaments themselves shatter from the inside. The ant bites down. The muscle fibers snap. The jaw locks shut around the leaf vein permanently. The ant could not let go even if the fungus suddenly disappeared. Her own jaws have been welded into the leaf by their own broken machinery. Then she dies. Over the next few days, a pale fungal stalk grows out of the back of her head. It looks almost like a small horn. After a week or two, it ripens, and it releases a fine cloud of spores onto the forest floor below, exactly where the next batch of foragers will walk. The cycle starts again. There's a fossilized leaf in a museum in Germany with the same bite scar on its central vein. Same pattern, same height, same kind of ant. The leaf is 48 million years old. This trick is older than the Himalayas, older than humans, older than the family tree that produced us. 48 million years of practice. But here's the part of the story that I love the most. This fungus, this terrifying puppet master that has been steering ants for 48 million years, has its own enemy. When scientists tracked how many of these zombie ant corpses actually produce viable spores, the number was tiny, 6.5%. Why so few? Because there is another fungus. A second species that grows over the Cordyceps stalk and caps it. Like a tiny lid. It doesn't eat the Cordyceps. It just sits on top and prevents it from releasing spores. Scientists call it the hyperparasite. The parasite of the parasite. 93.5% of zombie fungus stalks are cut off before they can reproduce by another fungus that depends in turn on the existence of the first one. The puppeteer has its own puppeteer. So if you're worried about The Last of Us, about a fungus jumping from ants to humans, the science is gentle on that point. The Cordyceps unilateralis lives at around 25 degrees Celsius. The human body sits at 37. About 95% of fungi simply cannot grow at our body temperature. That is one of the quiet superpowers of being warm-blooded. We are too hot for almost everything that eats things our size. The fungus is also deeply specialized. One variant of Ophiocordyceps manipulates exactly one species of ant. Bridging from carpenter ants to humans would take millions of years of evolutionary changes that nobody has any reason to expect. The Last of Us is fiction. But the lesson the fungus teaches about how nature solves a problem is not. For 150 years, we assumed that to control a body, you have to control its brain. The fungus didn't get that memo. It controls the body from the outside. By gripping each muscle fiber directly, it doesn't need to think. It just runs an algorithm that has been refined for 48 million years. And that algorithm beats us. There's something humbling about that. Something almost peaceful. if you sit with it. Intelligence is one way of solving problems. It is not the only way. The universe has been doing this for a very long time without us, and it is remarkably good at it. So next time you walk through a forest, or a garden, or even your own backyard, remember that under every leaf there might be a tiny machine running on rules older than your species. Quietly, patiently, perfectly. And the fungus is not even the strangest one out there. In the rainforests of Hawaii, on a single leaf, there lives a caterpillar that hunts other insects. It eats them. And then it does something nobody can quite explain. It saves the heads, the empty exoskeletons, the husks, and it glues them onto its own body, layer after layer, until it is wearing a coat made of the bodies of the things it killed. Scientists call it the bone collector. There are fewer than 24 of them in the world. Why does it dress in the bones of its victims? Nobody is entirely sure, but the answer, when we get to it, is even stranger than you'd guess.